Welcome to Life Stories, where truth isn't always what you were raised to believe. What if one simple DNA test, done just for fun, shattered everything you thought you knew about your family? What if the people who kissed your forehead goodnight weren't your parents at all? In today's story, a college student uncovers a buried secret that turns her world upside down. A stolen name, a missing mother, and a past that refuses to stay hidden. This isn't just about identity, it's about justice, memory, and the question that haunts us all. Who am I, really? Stay with us, because what starts as a late-night joke among friends will lead to a courtroom, a reunion 24 years in the making, and a final choice that could break a family or rebuild it from the truth. And now, let's begin. Brooklyn Carter never cared much about her DNA. To her, heritage was something static, carved in stone and passed down like an old photograph. She was 23, sharp-tongued, and never the sentimental type. Born and raised in a quiet suburb just outside Boston, she had always been told she was a true New Englander, whatever that meant. Her father, Richard, a retired lawyer, had a voice like gravel and a soft spot for black coffee and war documentaries. Her mother, Diane, all pearls and pressed linens, once told her their ancestors arrived with the Mayflower. But none of that mattered the night she sat barefoot in a cramped student apartment in Austin, Texas. It was a Wednesday, too late for drinks, too early for regrets. A party, if it could be called that, had just fizzled into a sleepy gathering of Spotify playlists and cheap wine. Brooklyn slouched on a beanbag chair, half listening as Zoe, her best friend and unlicensed chaos engine, waved around a bright blue box like it was a winning lottery ticket. DNA test kits, people? One for each of us, Zoe announced with theatrical flair. Let's uncover our secret royal lineages. Tyler, maybe you're descended from Vikings. Brooklyn, you could be 2% alien. I'm 100% sarcasm, Brooklyn muttered, raising an eyebrow as she inspected the tube in her hand. Zoe laughed. Come on, it's harmless. You spit, you mail it, you wait. Who knows? Maybe we'll find out someone's adopted. Brooklyn almost rolled her eyes. Almost. But something flickered inside her, maybe curiosity, maybe just the desire to escape the numb routine of lectures and cold calls from her parents. She unscrewed the cap, spit, sealed the thing, and forgot about it. 2 weeks passed. Spring thickened the air with pollen and heat. Brooklyn barely remembered the test until Zoe's panicked voice called her late one evening. Check your email. Now. Brooklyn sat up in bed, the glow of her laptop casting shadows across her face. She clicked the subject line, Your DNA test results. Action required. But instead of colorful pie charts or ancestral percentages, a red banner filled the screen. Your account has been locked. Please contact the legal department immediately. Your DNA matches a profile involved in an unresolved criminal investigation. Her heart dropped. She stared at the message like it might rearrange itself into something sane. Her pulse quickened. She refreshed the page twice, 3 times. Still the same bloodless warning. Zoe, she whispered into the phone, this has to be a mistake. But Zoe was silent on the other end. Then, Brooke, I just found out I'm part Puerto Rican. That was my big shock. What the hell is yours? Brooklyn didn't answer. She couldn't. The next morning, after an email exchange that only deepened her dread, Brooklyn boarded a high-speed train bound for Capitol Square, Washington. Zoe insisted on going with her. Brooklyn didn't argue. She didn't have the strength. The office was cold, too modern, too quiet. The receptionist greeted by name. Miss Carter, the legal department will see you now. Zoe squeezed her hand up. When Brooklyn stood to follow the man in the navy suit, Attorney Thomas Bell, Zoe had to stay behind. The conference room was sterile. One projector screen, one thick folder. One man who looked like he hadn't slept in years. We've matched your DNA to a woman named Savannah Monroe. She disappeared in March of 2001 after giving birth at Ridgeview Medical in Miami. Brooklyn blinked. I think you've got the wrong person. Bell slid a document across the table. Savannah's DNA was stored secretly by a nurse who suspected something was wrong. That sample sat in limbo until last week when your test triggered the system. You're a 99.9987% match. Miss Carter, you're Savannah's daughter. The words didn't land. They detonated. Brooklyn felt the floor shift. Everything inside her recoiled. She thought of Diane's soft hands, Richard's deep voice reading her bedtime stories, the birthday cards signed in elegant cursive. Lies. She stumbled out into the lobby, barely breathing. Zoe rushed to her side. What happened? Brooklyn's voice cracked. My name isn't Brooklyn, it's Brielle. Brielle Monroe. I was stolen. For the first time, she couldn't speak in sarcasm. For the first time, Zoe didn't laugh. That night, back at the hotel, Brielle, sat cross-legged on the floor, the unopened manila folder in her lap. She pulled out a photo, a young woman with soft curls and haunted eyes. The name typed beneath read Savannah Monroe. She looked nothing like Diane, but her eyes were hers. In the back of the folder, a note in hurried handwriting. Her name is Brielle. I named her after my mother. March 18th, 2001. Her birthday. Her entire life redefined by a name she didn't remember and a mother she never knew. What would you do if everything you believed about your family turned out to be a lie? Could you love the people who raised you if they kept your real identity buried? As Brooklyn, now Brielle, races toward the truth, she must decide what matters more, the family that raised her, or the mother who lost her. Her journey into the past has just begun. But what she uncovers next will unravel more than just her story. It will shake the lives of everyone she thought she knew. The road to Tennessee blurred outside the window as Brielle leaned her head against the cold glass of the rental car, her thoughts more jagged than the winding turns. Zoe was driving, knuckles white on the steering wheel, and the silence between them was heavy. Neither had spoken much since the meeting in Capitol Square. There were no words left to explain the kind of grief you feel when you're mourning a life you only thought was yours. The air shifted as they passed the state line. It was greener here, quieter. Somewhere in these hills, Brielle's mother, Savannah Monroe, was either alive or a ghost that no one ever found. Rachel Myers, a former nurse from Ridgeview Medical, had reached out through a contact of Zoe's journalism professor. She claimed to remember Savannah, claimed to remember the baby they said was stillborn. She used to hum to the bump, Rachel had said over the phone. Some old folk melody. She wouldn't stop singing it, even when she was crying. Now, after 24 years, Rachel had agreed to meet. But as they pulled up to the small cabin nestled in Smoky Creek's wooded outskirts, Brielle wasn't ready. Not to face the past, not to hear what came after that hum. Rachel opened the door before they knocked. Her hair was silver, pulled back tight, but her eyes, sharp and wet with guilt, hadn't dulled. You look just like her, she whispered, then motioned for them to come in. The house smelled of tea leaves and thyme. Sitting stiffly on a wooden chair, Brielle clutched the edge of the table like it could anchor her to the floor. I need to know everything. Rachel nodded, poured tea, then sat across from her like a woman preparing for confession. Savannah went into labor late, March 17th, alone. No family. The birth went smoothly. No complications. She held you for maybe a minute before Dr. Calvin Brooks came in and said there was a problem. He told her you died, that it was sudden, unexplainable. Rachel's voice cracked. But I saw you breathe. The room pulsed around Brielle. You saw me breathe? You had the faintest little cry, Rachel said, tears forming now. He ordered me out of the room. When I came back, Savannah was screaming. They gave her a death certificate, told her to sign it. She wouldn't, so they sedated her. The next day she was gone. Gone where? No one knows. The hospital erased her discharge. They said she checked herself out, but I don't believe that. I think they forced her out, like they forced her to believe you were dead. Brielle couldn't move. Her hands trembled. So who took me? Rachel hesitated. A man showed up that night, drove a black sedan. He signed nothing, just took the bundle from Dr. Brooks and left. I memorized his plates. I reported it. Internal Affairs started an inquiry, but it went nowhere. I was let go the next month. Zoe leaned forward. Do you remember his name? I only heard him once. Brooks called him Alan. Brielle stood so suddenly her chair scraped against the floor. Alan Norris. That's the name my adoptive parents gave me, the man who introduced them to me. Her voice broke. So they knew. They knew it was illegal. Rachel stood too. I don't know what they knew, Brielle, but I know what I saw. You were alive, and your mother didn't give you away. They took you. The sky outside had turned slate gray. Thunder rumbled faintly through the hills. Later that night, alone in the small inn on the edge of Smoky Creek, Brielle sat curled up in a blanket, reading every line of the forged adoption contract Zoe had hacked from the health department archives. No court stamps, no notarization, just Richard Carter's signature and Alan Norris's. She called her father, her real father. He picked up after one ring. "Brooklyn? It's Brielle." Her voice was ice. "Did you know?" Silence. "I'm going to ask you once. Did you know I wasn't a legal adoption?" There was a long breath. "Then we were told you'd been abandoned, that you had no family, that if we didn't take you, you'd be lost to the system. We didn't know. You signed it, Dad. There was no court, no judge, no social worker, just a handshake with a man who trafficked babies." He said nothing. "I'm pressing charges against Alan, and if it turns out you knew more than you've said, I'll testify against you too." "Brielle, please." She hung up. Zoe watched from the doorway, eyes wide, but didn't speak. The next morning, Brielle received an email from Ethan Marks, the investigative journalist who'd covered missing children cases for over a decade. "I've tracked down someone you need to meet. Isaac Thompson. He was Alan's driver in 2001. He says he remembers transporting a newborn from Ridgeview. He's willing to talk." Attached was a phone number, a photo, and one line in bold. He confirms the baby was taken from Savannah Monroe. "If you were Brielle, would you seek justice, even if it meant destroying the people who raised you? Do the ties of blood outweigh the memories that raised a child into a woman?" She thought the truth would set her free, but now it may tear everything else apart. In the next chapter, Brielle knocks on a door that hasn't been opened in 24 years. The rain came down in a soft mist as Brielle stepped out of the cab, her hand clutching the pendant at her chest, her name etched in cursive. Brielle, the name her mother had given her but never had the chance to call her by. The road to this moment had been long, fractured by betrayal and shadowed by the kind of truth that unravels not just memory, but identity. Savannah Monroe lived in a modest house nestled deep in the Tennessee hills, just beyond a clearing where wildflowers grew unbothered by time. A candle flickered in the window, and for a second Brielle felt like a child again, standing before a door she wasn't sure she had the right to knock on. But she did. The door opened slowly. Savannah stood there in a worn gray sweater, her eyes uncertain, her mouth parted as if trying to form a name she hadn't said aloud in 24 years. Her hands trembled slightly. "You? Are you?" "I'm Brielle," she whispered. "I'm your daughter." Time didn't shatter, it folded. Savannah reached out as if afraid the image in front of her might dissolve. But when her fingers touched Brielle's cheek and felt warm skin and a trembling breath, she broke. Not loudly, but in the way someone collapses into memory, into ache and love all at once. They fell into each other's arms, mother and daughter, two lives once torn, now fused by time and truth. They sat in the living room, surrounded by the scent of lavender and old books. Savannah pulled out a faded photograph from a drawer. "I kept this," she said, showing Brielle a picture of herself, pregnant and beaming. "They told me you died, but I never believed them. Every birthday I lit a candle. Every year I left a note in the chapel down the hill. I never gave up." Brielle wiped her tears with the edge of her sleeve. "They stole me. They lied. And now they'll answer for it." Savannah looked up. "The man, Alan, he's still out there?" "Yes, and he's being prosecuted. Isaac, the driver who took me from the hospital, testified. Rachel, the nurse, too. Ethan Marks is building the case. We're going to court." Savannah's fingers tightened around the pendant. "They thought we'd disappear. They didn't count on us finding our way back." The trial unfolded weeks later in a courthouse humming with reporters in silence. Alan Norris sat stiffly in a gray suit, expression blank, as Brielle took the stand. Her voice didn't shake. "My name is Brielle Monroe. For 24 years I lived under another name, believing in a life that was never mine. I loved the people who raised me. I still do. But love doesn't erase a crime. I was stolen from my mother's arms. My name, my past, my entire identity was taken from me without consent. This is not just about me. It's about every child who was silenced before they could speak and every mother who was told to forget." Savannah sat in the front row, hands folded, eyes wet but steady. When Isaac and Rachel testified, the courtroom tensed. The jury listened, and when the judge pronounced the verdict, 12 years in federal prison for Alan Norris, Brielle didn't cheer. She didn't smile. She only turned to Savannah and gripped her hand. "We did it," she said quietly. "We brought it into the light." In the days that followed, Brielle was offered interview requests, podcast appearances, even a book deal, but she turned them all down. Instead, she returned to the Tennessee hills. One afternoon, as the wind stirred the tall grass outside, Savannah found her in the garden, kneeling beside a bed of violets. "You don't have to stay here, she said softly. "You have your whole life ahead of you." Brielle looked up, the sun catching the gold in her eyes. "I know, but this is where I want to be, at least for now. I need to know what it means to live in truth." They rebuilt the old house together, painted the porch, repaired the broken shutters, planted sunflowers along the fence. Sometimes they spoke of the past, sometimes they didn't. Some wounds didn't need words to heal. Then one morning, as fog rolled low across the valley, a letter arrived. It was from Diane. "My dearest girl," it began. "I don't know what to call you anymore, Brooklyn or Brielle, but I know this. I have loved you every day since I first held you in my arms. I didn't know the truth back then, not all of it, but I suspected, and I chose silence because I thought loving you was enough to make it right. Now I know it wasn't. I know I failed you. If you never write back, I understand, but if someday you want to talk, even just once, I'll be here." Brielle held the letter for a long time, her thumb tracing the curve of the signature. Mom. That night, she lit a candle on the windowsill, the same way Savannah once had, and stared into the quiet, wondering how many mothers had lit flames for children lost to lies. At the university's Cultural Identity Symposium months later, Brielle stood behind a podium, a microphone before her, and hundreds of eyes watching. "I once believed identity was something given to you, stamped on a birth certificate, written in your parents' handwriting. But now I understand it's something we claim, something we fight for. I am Brielle Monroe. I was stolen, but I am no longer lost." The audience rose in thunderous applause, and in the front row, Savannah stood with tears streaming down her cheeks. Beside her, Rachel and Ethan smiled, and Zoe cheered loudest of all. After the event, Brielle stepped outside into the crisp evening air. A young woman approached her, eyes wide, voice trembling. "I read your story," she said. I think the same thing might have happened to me." Brielle didn't hesitate. She handed the girl a card. "You're not alone. We'll figure it out together." And as the lights of the university glowed behind her and the night spread like ink across the sky, Brielle felt it for the first time. Not closure, not peace, but something deeper. A beginning. What are your thoughts after following Brielle's emotional journey from deception to truth? Comment 100 if this story moved you. Where in the world are you watching from? Share this video with a friend who believes in justice, healing, and the power of truth. Thank you for watching Life Stories.